Yeah, are you able to switch channels to go back then?
Bethan, can you say something? Okay, let me just try switching again. Oh, hiya, is that Bethan? Great.
There's two Bethans. So, just so you know, Bethan all in Wales, me, I'm just observing today, okay?
Okay, no problem. So Bethan, thank you. Bethan Davis, all good.
Iawn, gyfarfod heddiw. Good morning, very warm welcome. Literally warm. Do you want to? You haven't started, have you?
We're not on record yet.
Right, we will record on your request. Right, I'm good to go. Are you not good to go? Right. Bore da. Bore da pawb, o croeso gynnes iawn i'r bwrdd heddiw. A very warm welcome. I hope you keep drinking water throughout this this meeting for your own self-preservation. I'd like to welcome Melton, Janice St John Matthews in attendance, shadowing our nurse director. She's from Health Professional and Quality. That's right. Thank you. We've got Ian Matheson, our Director of Strategy, Director of Education, Strategy and Transformation, and a very warm welcome to Helen Watkins, her very first board meeting on her very first 2 hours in work. I think it's a close record, that. We've got Amanda Howard, an Assistant Director in the National Programmes. We've got Maria Roberts, Assistant Director of Quality, and she'll be presenting on the agenda item 4.1. Where's Rhiannon?
Join us.
And Rhiannon Windsor will join us. I thought I hadn't seen it. And she'll be helping present on the stats survey. I've got an apology from Dawn Jones, an independent member who is unwell today. So is there anyone else I've forgotten to say hello to this morning, apart from Julie Rogers? Hello, Julie. So are there any interests to be declared that have not already been declared and that are pertinent to today's agenda? Very good. Thank you very much. So can we go to the draft minutes of the board meeting held on the 11th of July 2024? Can I ask, have you all read the minutes, please? Are there any items of accuracy you wish to raise? Can I ask you to go to the action log from the board meeting held on the 11th of July? Are you content with the action log? Can I ask you to go back to the minutes then, 1.4 of the board meeting? Are there any issues you wish to raise as matters arising that are not covered by the action log or by today's agenda? Can't see any. Are you content for me to sign off these minutes as being accurate then, please? Thank you very much. Now, I know you all wait with bated breath for the chair's report, and it is there for what it is. I'd like to highlight a couple of things only. Number one, of course, is it's been politically very frenetic out there across the UK and also in Wales. And in Wales, we are, Leonard Morgan is still our Minister for Health, but she will, so there will be a selection of the First Minister, which will occur Wednesday next week. And following that, of course, if she becomes First Minister, she will no longer be the Health Minister. So there's significant change in the wind for us in the health sector. I need to also point out the very challenging time, potentially from the cyber issue, from the mass outing that occurred across the world, the global, and I just point out the relevance to that, to our organisation and also our corporate risk register. I just want to say thank you to everybody for their actions and for the way that our business continuity was unaffected. So thank you for that. There's also been a trail of really difficult reports. And I think the Nursing and Midwifery Council report on an external report on behaviours, I think goes very similar to other organisational commentary. And I just like to point out the real key importance of our compassionate leadership work here in Wales. And I know that the Director General has written out to health organisations in Wales, underlining that. And I took the issue of signing up to the Compassionate Leadership Pledge to the chairs of the health boards and health organisations in Wales last month. we live in what is becoming clear, very challenging economic times. And a new government in Westminster, I don't think necessarily means everything is solved. It'll be interesting to see what the Bank of England does today with interest rates. But what is for sure that the pound spent on public service is a very valuable pound. And I think the more we do to show in this organisation demonstration of value and productivity, exactly the same as in all other parts of the NHS, that is really important. I've had the pleasure of going to the Royal Welsh Show, and it's always a pleasure to go to the Royal Welsh Show, but actually to see our stand inundated with people wanting to know how they can do this or that in terms of coming into or increasing their activity in the NHS. It was heartwarming. It was a wide range of ages, and it was also very pleasing to see people already working in the NHS expressing their joy and also some of the frustrations of working in the NHS. But the footfall was immense, and I believe our Bwrdd, our Careersville site, took an enormous expansion in hits. Was it something like 300 times?
Yeah, I'm not sure about it. I know our career section of our website.
So, you know, it's really good. And I also had the chance to speak to some of the students studying nursing in Aberystwyth University. And what's really clear is the connection between place and community, and the intent to continue after studying to work in the rural health community. I think whereas before rural might have sounded remote, it's not remote. It's just connected, and connected in ways that I think our primary care workforce strategy certainly supports. I'll leave the rest of the report to you, for you, but I'm asking you, please, to note the chair's actions that were taken. So I'm asking you to note and ratify the chair's action taken to approve the Social Care Wales invoice of 427,893p. Is that right? No? 427,893. Yeah, not the pence. So we're on the 6th of June. So can I ask you to ratify? I'm asking you to ratify the chair's action on the 1st of July to approve the 3 pay circulars. Can I ask you to ratify?
Yes.
And I'm asking you to ratify the chair's action taken on the 4th of July to appoint Dawn Jones as a member of the Audit and Assurance Committee, and Judith Hardesty, who's here at her first board meeting, formal board meeting.
Yes, it's the enormous.
Yeah. As a member of the Education Commission and Quality. Can I ask you to ratify? Happy to take any questions, and I'm sure Glyn will cover any details. Happy to take any questions, but I think whilst it's politically very busy, we must concentrate on our students, our trainees, and above all, our patient services that our patients are getting. Thank you. Alex.
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully people have had a chance to read the report. I'm sorry it's a little bit late this time. I had a bit of a reprieve from the chairman because of annual leave. So I'm not going to go through it in any great detail, just to draw attention the purpose of today to the monitoring status, which board members will be aware to make it routine. I believe we still haven't had a formal response to our INTP. even though I think some of the outputs now have, so we should be getting that quite soon. But don't worry, we're carrying on. The only other thing, just to note, Lisa, do you want to just update on the nursing workforce plan? Because I'd referred to that in my chief executive report on the expectation review.
Thank you, Alex. So in terms of actually the nursing workforce plan, actually we have reviewed that, and it does need some further intervention actually, and actually we're going to add to that. We are going to bring that back to the September board with a view actually to launching it in October. So there's more refinements that have been undertaken as we speak. Lots of new information coming.
Thank you. I'll take any questions. I don't want to. There's lots on the agenda today, so I don't want to necessarily.
Any questions?
No questions, Chair, but just a comment. We're all aware this is a public meeting, these are public documents, and I think we should be careful sometimes in terms of the initials that we use it, that we explain what these mean for the public to understand. We may know, for example, what IMTP is, but there are a few papers where that's used, sometimes explained, other times not, just as a duty to the public.
Absolutely, I totally agree. Apologies for that.
Okay. Thank you very much. So I'm going on to part 3, strategic items. 3.1, this is the Education and Training Plan 25-26. Lisa.
Diolch Cadeirydd, a ti fi'n mynd i gyflwyno hwn yn y Gymraeg nechdau.
Diolch.
Felly, ati sydd y pwrpas y papur hyn yw i cyflwyno drafft terfynol y cynllun addysg a hyfforddiant ar gyfer 2025 i 2026 i fwrdd ar atodiadau cysylltiedig a manylion. Okay, I can revert. And go back to the other one.
Not working?
Okay, actually, I'll
Gallwn ni dweud yn dwy iaith.
Alla, yeah. O'n i'n ffydd yna?
Iawn.
Okay. So bore da pawb, mae'r papur hwn yn cyflwyno drafft terfynol y cynllun addysg a hyfforddiant ar gyfer 2025 i 2026 i fwrdd ageg a'r atodiadau cysylltiedig a manylion y digwyddiadau sydd wedi gwneud ers i'r cynllun drafft cael ei gyflwyno yn sesiwn datblygu'r bwrdd ar mis Mehefin. Mae'r bwrdd wedi gweld sawl argraffiad o'r cynllun hyn, felly rwy'n gobeithio taw cwestiynau gawn ni heddi. Mae'r cynllun hyn wedi ei ddatblygu mewn cydweithred arweinwyr ardal trwy gyfres o weithredau drafftio argymhellion dan arweiniad y tîm cynllunio a perfformiad. A mae rhaid i fi weid, diolch i bawb sydd wedi cyfrannu i'r cynllun hyn. Mae fe'n un sydd wedi cyflwyno cynnwys llawer o bobl. Mae'r tîm cynllunio a perfformiad a cyllid wedi cydweithio ag arweinwyr proffesiynol ageg i sicrhau bod y nifreoedd comisiynu a'r ymgellu yn cyllid ar wybodaeth sydd wedi cynnwys yn yr y cynllun yn gadarn ac yn adlewyrchu angen y system a'r gallu i'r hyfforddi. Felly, hapus i gymryd cwestiynau am y Tom a mae Glyn yn hybu hefyd.
Diolch, Lisa. Okay. So we've had the paper. We've been involved considerably throughout the development of this plan. Are there any questions or comments people wish to make?
Just one quick comment, Claire, and I don't know if you know the answer to this. What will the change of political leadership be? The timetable that we set out, is that still secure? We spent a lot of time with Judith and others making them aware of it.
I think what we've done is we're unaware of really as to what those consequences are. But I think through the engagement that we've had, we've obviously indicated that we want ongoing dialogue and ongoing conversation from the outset to in order that we can actually make any improvements or changes that are necessary. But the key aspect there is actually that our stakeholders will also be kept informed of what those conversations are as well. So at this point in time, Jen, we don't know.
Can I just make a comment, particularly to firstly endorse the plan? This is critical for us as a board. I'm pleased to see some of the comments that I made previously and the board are included in this revised version. So there's no question to ask from me. But I think it's important to note the emphasis within the plan around engagement. And I was encouraged to see that there were 24 stakeholder feedbacks that come back. A number of execs have led, I think there were 18 groups where the feedback from our partners, key stakeholders, are fed into this plan. So it's not something that we've developed. This has very much been informed by stakeholders and partners, and that's evident in the plan, and I welcome that.
Any other comments?
Yeah, echoing what we said, had opportunity to consider this at ECQC. We did, and I think it's important that we commented on particular risks that were highlighted within here to us, and in particular the risk related to the flat crash funding scenario. But yeah, lots of work planned. Again, echoes that there was good stakeholder engagement.
Okay, sorry, thank you. This is, well, it's the second time I've seen it because I sat in the committee. So first of all, I'd like to say, having only just come to this, how impressed I am with it. And I'll echo everything else that's been said. I think it's a really good plan. My question was related to the risks which have been identified, but also just relaying it a little bit to your comments, Chair, about the Royal Welsh Show and the interest in the NHS. One of the risks here is about training and student recruitment. And so I'm sort of want to know how that interest can be harnessed to look at how we can encourage those people to come into the training. And is there more that's planned to be done to look at the way that is delivered? And I know there's reference obviously to the enhanced recruitment offer, and I know there's lots of flexibility within programmes, but it feels like there is interest in Wales, and I've been closely associated in the past with Agored and the nurses team. But are we tapping into that in the way in which we offer training places and the way in which our education providers are doing that?
So we can answer that. Actually, that was something that we recognised last year when we were undertaking the plan. And obviously, as a result of the data capture that we've got, we were actually also monitoring the fill rates actually into these programmes. And therefore, we recognise the importance of actually recruiting people into actually what we call the pipeline. And therefore, extensively last year, we started work actually on a number of arenas where we were actually introducing actually this information to a variety of actually groups, not only actually just young people actually through Royal Welsh, but going out to further education colleges, working with them, recognising there were students actually in those arenas who aspired actually to come onto our programmes, but they may not at this time of year get the grades they wanted. How could we, recognising actually that they had that commitment to care, of how could we actually work with them to retain them and get them onto the future programmes as well. As a result of that, successfully, we saw the increase actually in the fill rates last September as a result of those direct interventions. We've also got a marketing manager, and therefore not working just in isolation. Part of the contract management actually with the HEIs is actually for them to be marketing more to actually those areas where they are sent and heard, going into those arenas as well, complementing the work actually in Tregeddfa and all the information that we provide actually on our website. The marketing manager actually with actually a variety of aspects. We work with the Royal College of Nursing in order to actually get that sort of cadet scheme underway as well, So there's a number of interventions and we're continuing to do that. And hopefully we will see the benefit of that. As you can imagine, we will be watching at its bill rates over the next month, definitely.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think just to say, thanks to all of the people involved in this, because it is probably equivalent or maybe even more work than the integrated term plan that is also important. And obviously this is the bit that really secures most of the funding of the organisation as well. So it is absolutely mission critical. I think, not to lose the point that we discussed when we discussed this in draft earlier, that actually an annual process around this would be okay if there was a longer term plan, but it still feels very short term and very stop start.
Can you just repeat that?
So I think we need to just make sure we capture that point, whether that's in the plan or in the letter that goes with this plan to achieve it. That actually we're doing the best that we can without the benefit of that collective vision really on where we're going in the next 10 years. So it is what it is from that perspective. And I know we had a long conversation about that in the last board meeting, but I think that is still a really important point that we need to hold on to as well.
Lisa, one of the things I'm really interested in is getting people on the path, but also keeping them. And the figures from the Nursing and Midwifery Council report demonstrate that the numbers leaving after 5 years across, this is a UK now, not specifically Wales, is concerning. And secondly, the actual productivity of wards in particular and community-based teams is based on experienced people still in post. And the figures from the Office for Budgetary Control, they pointed that out as one of the factors in the less productivity despite having more staff. So I think it's, as much as I'm really interested in bringing people in, it's how we keep people engaged, supported, and continuing to train and expand their interests and their capabilities as and when they want to do that, and the system needs it.
So just a reminder to everybody about the National Retention Programme that we've obviously introduced in Wales, which is a key component of doing that very piece of work. So as a result of that, and this actually relates to the Strategic Nursing Workforce Plan and all the other workforce plans too. So as a result of that programme, actually we've now actually developed actually that piece of work where we've invested in people actually in every single health board and trust across Wales in order to improve their retention opportunities actually within those arenas. Already we're starting to see actually improvements in various areas to how that is happening. And that will include actually aspects in terms of actually preceptorship, clinical supervision, but also in terms of recognising that some people actually may want to be leaving some of the professions earlier than anticipated. But how can we actually work with them to actually, as you rightly say, that King's Fund actually report actually does reflect influence and actually support some of those people actually in that first 5 years. You're absolutely right. And we've recognised that and known that for quite a considerable time. So the preceptorship and the supervision opportunities of those individuals is absolutely key. And it's working with the system in order to allow that to happen. But it's also equipping those individuals actually as our registrants to understand what their responsibility to seek that too. So it is quite a key piece of work.
Okay. So I don't know about you, but I'll be going to the Eisteddfod Genedlaethol.
I would too.
We have a stand there. And croeso I pawb dod. And I just to say to encourage people who have got the use of the Welsh language to be able to come into professions and to actually work through the medium of Welsh, study through the medium of Welsh. That I think is a really important ambition that this plan supports. So, are there any other questions or comments? This is a complex thing to do. And your point, Alex, about an annualised plan against a long-term plan would be something that we could start to not just show traction, but productivity and lead us into a better place going forward. So taking it all into account, all the nuances, and there'll be so many nuances within this, it's huge, but I'm asking you to approve the final 2025-26 education training plan with its appendices for submission to Welsh Government. And we will keep partners engaged as we get feedback from the government as we go forwards. Okay, can I ask your approval?
Yes.
Thank you very much indeed. Can I go now to agenda item 3.2?
Just leave the paper moment. Yeah, we want to put it back on. Sorry, just can't hear very well down there.
I should actually have said thank you to everybody who's been engaged with that process.
It's an intensive process, and I think every member of staff, either implicitly or explicitly, have got to be in this piece of work.
So the external reference group, you know, the stakeholder reference group has been a key part in it. You know, so there we go. So agenda item 3.2, this is a digital and data strategy progress update. Is there anything to report?
A little bit. Diolch, Sarah, thank you, Chairman. So as all of you, or many of you around the table, your support of the board to get the digital data strategy agreed in December 23 following the board development sessions. That was approved by the board, and this paper then gives an update of the progress since it was approved. So as you will remember, the strategy sets out the 5 missions that helps us deliver high quality and accessible digital solutions and improved a skilled digital workforce. And that in its turn supports HIW about delivering a skilled and sustainable workforce for our long-term sustainability within the NHS. So in the paper provides an update against each of the missions and the roadmap for year 1. I'm really pleased to confirm that we have achieved the milestone set out for the first year, and in doing so have achieved benefits and impact to the organisation and to the wider system. So just to draw your attention to a few areas that I do feel has added value and benefit. So in the paper, it describes the use of tools to drive efficiency and to reduce waste. The work done in relation to understanding and having a national approach to understanding capability and skills of the digital workforce. Considerable progress and work and effort that's gone into our learning platform, Bwrdd, which supports effective multidisciplinary learning, and for the first time as a systematic way of understanding and measuring our impact and learning, and will be a full foundation step to our education strategy as we move forward. And then the advances in digital and data in particular capabilities, which is having a role in enhancing our reputation and our support as a system leader to really raise the profile of workforce data as a strategic issue so that we can plan and make better informed decisions. So I'd really like to take the opportunity to thank the team in achievement and actually their contribution. None of this would have been possible without them, but also to recognise this is an organisational wide strategy. So this isn't all about the Digital and Data Directorate. This is about working in collaboration with every single department and directorate and our wider NHS colleagues and education partners as well to really drive the benefit of this. So the paper provides an overview, and members are asked to note the progress of the work completed that we've done in collaboration right across.
Thank you. John.
Chair, thank you, and thank you very much, Charlotte, for the paper. So for somebody who's, I would regard as digitally naive and perhaps data naive, to be able to understand the paper like this, it's commendable to you and the team the way that this is. Because it's not something that I find easy, and I'm quite naive about. But it was an excellent paper. And when I started to read it, when it said we've made substantial progress, immediately I thought, oh no, then let's see what this is on. Immediately you think there's very loaded words right at the start. But indeed, it has done that. It really was a good paper to read. And I thank the team for that. And as I said, for somebody that's quite naive in terms of these areas. I would like, Chair, if I may, pull out two areas that I was very pleased to see. And that's against Mission 4, which was the workforce trends data in a paper, and how we're using that. And the reason I raise that is because a number of people within the university sector and within health boards saying to me how important that data is. And therefore that is good for us. And I was pleased to see that as an update. And secondly, something we've talked about in the past is how we're working with partners' decision analysis services. I think it said, where we're looking at supply element and demand element around future workforce modelling. And I liked reading that work because our ability to model future, whether it's financial modelling or whether it's commissioning numbers, I think is absolutely critical in terms of our work. But as many of you will know, there is always a but with me, and the but came right at the very end, where you slipped in under governance and risk, a sentence that says that because of demand and capacity, there's the need for prioritization mechanisms to be put in place in order to achieve our strategy. And it says, particularly the word that was used, against some of our IMTP ambitions will therefore need to be declined. So I would be interested to understand what that means and what the board perhaps need to be aware of in terms of the prioritization that we're now putting in place for this strategy because of demand and capacity, and what we mean by areas being declined.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, Chair.
So in relation to the prioritisation process, this is run across a number of stakeholders with representation from finance, from planning, and then from the corporate area that are affected. And we take into consideration our ability within the team to respond to a request, because as well as those within the IMTP, we get in month, in week, in day requests to actually do additional work. So we're balancing the two things about what the requirements of the IMTP and any additions. So additions that we had may have been helping to support the 36-hour week work or working with the staff survey. And that's a prioritisation process that we are making sure this isn't about a digital and data decision, that we're actually taking a wider view of the organisation. And then if required, that will be escalated to the executive team for final approval and through DDG. So in relation to the part that the bits that said that may be required to be declined, in our initial prioritisation exercise for considering what was in the IMP, we did decline one or two requests. Those requests were, for an example, to build a risk management IT system to manage incidents and risks. So we determined that there was a national solution to do that, and that wouldn't be a good time of effective use of resources and is not core business and wouldn't add value. So and we shared that back through the DDG process. Had that been more core to core business, we would have made a recommendation, and then it would have been for the executive team to sign that off. But we are actively planning. The demand is significant on the team, and you'll also recognise that we've placed it on a corporate risk register and looking through resources to support that. But we've got an active monthly process, and it is something as an executive team we are considering more broadly about prioritisation. So it's an ongoing solution.
And we'll be kept informed.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. Like John, I highlighted at the bottom the substantial bit, and I think it's a great paper, so thank you. Building on the bit, John, I also picked up this issue of prioritisation and note that you talk about the sort of capacity constraints, and I was worried about the pressure on the team where you talk about a high level of sickness. It's also led to capacity constraints. So just thinking about those requests we just described, they will be coming on a daily basis, how we have to our staff in that kind of situation. So I wanted to highlight that. Also, just from, again, I'm probably an even below John on the sort of digital naivety scale. But it just, we talked about it, or the chair did in his report about the sort of the outages that have happened and the vulnerability that there is around these types of services. And as part of this strategy, how are we considering that in terms of going forward, because we are becoming heavily reliant, quite rightly, and being able to use these tools. Are we factoring in and making sure that we're business continuity that we want? So those were a couple of things. Also, just on the appendix, I can see why you might need to go out to secure on our sort of readiness and our digital framework. There were some areas that seem to have these gaps and have not responded. So how we're pushing that out. Absolutely. On the great paper.
Great, thank you. So in relation to our areas of vulnerability in maybe resources is linked particularly to our data team, and we actually brought a business case to the executive team yesterday, and we're now considering how we take that forward to address the resource issues that needs to be identified, and we're just phasing some of that business case now to bring back to the team. And also we will be highlighting some of those issues and possibilities with you in the board development session at the end of August for you to see that in some more detail. In relation to the sickness part, that's in with one team. It's a very small team. It's a team of 5 people, and the sickness related is not there's a mix of ongoing long-term conditions within the team as well. So that is, but it is something that we are paying attention to, and we had some significant feedback from our staff survey around potential burnout, and we've done a directorate-wide session of understanding what that means for an individual and how we take proactive action. And every department now has an individual action plan around looking at the things that they will do to support staff and to understand roles, responsibilities, accountability. So, and that's done now at a departmental level for linking back to our staff survey. In relation with the DCF and the skills gap, we've got a plan this year now that is very focused on NHS workforce and being out there, and that's in our plan to get the numbers up and to target different areas of the workforce so that we really can understand the data. And related to cloud vulnerability, there's lots of benefits of a cloud strategy, and we are working through alternatives and business continuity. And as an organisation, we've done some considerable work on our business impact analysis. If I should probably say when we are affected, and we're testing and resetting up a testing finish group from August about our business continuity planning to make sure that roles and responsibilities are understood. And the recent test is a good example of managing through those what if scenarios.
Thank you. And excellent paper. And what really struck me is the holistic approach that's been taken to developing strategy. It's rare actually to see a digital and data strategy that actually involves the whole organisation actively. And that really shone through for me in terms of this annual report. Clearly, the resourcing issue is going to be an ongoing issue. But even in the time I've been on board, you've flagged resourcing issues as you've gone along, and it's good to hear that you're continuing to keep them under review. And indeed raising that to executive team as and when necessary. But I think our future success is really dependent on a good understanding of the data to inform our planning, and that comprehensive encouragement of digital capacity across the whole organisation. So really impressed with this work.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really interesting, and you got somebody else who's in the same sort of area in terms of I can use data when it's presented to me. I don't know how it gets there, but that's fine. I'm interested in mission 2, and I was sort of thinking about this whole idea of productivity, and particularly interested in the fact that there is this framework for healthcare in Wales. Funding for 2 years. I don't know what 2 years that was, but to skill up new workforce coming in, the existing workforce, that's huge. And so I just wonder, where does this sit moving forward with discussion with Welsh Government? I think it does come back to the fact we don't have an overall strategy for the NHS in Wales. But if we don't, I say we, I suppose I mean the whole NHS in Wales. If we don't do this, then we're going to fall behind, but also we're going to get staff who are coming in, who are used to using digital, used to use platforms, and they don't have it now. So where does all that sit, and where are the discussions with NHS Wales? I don't know where DCHW is in. It's a big question that I need to pick up on outside, but I would be interested to see.
It's a big question.
Yeah, so to give reassurance on the 2 years, that was part funded to write the framework, to do the landscape review and that.
Okay.
But that piece of work now has gone into our business as usual, and we're doing the active programme to increase the numbers, and we've got that. In relation to the system issue, I think strategically this is an issue as an organisation, as a system. We are starting to understand and take action to look at that. So this week, there was a Team Wales meeting. It was Monday. No, it wasn't Team Wales. There was an executive, all executives across Wales were together on a development session that the second of which, the first focused on workforce and AI, and the second one that we held, that was held on Monday, actually was talking about population health and primary care, but implicit in that was the need for data analytics. So I think in lots of different forums we are raising this as a strategic issue, that this is not the domain of a digital director. This is everybody's business, and I think working in partnership, and we had an initial discussion, Alex led an initial discussion yesterday with the chief executive of DHEW and the finance director about how do we take this forward, and it's something that we're exploring in partnership with DHEW about addressing your concern about systematic approach to skill and maturity of digital. I think it's a more strategic approach as opposed to some of the tactical things, and you probably do need both.
Yeah, and if I may, just thinking about the rural aspect, there's also the ability for people to connect and actually have access to systems of work in areas where coverage isn't great. And I don't know if the cloud helps in this because I don't understand it. But I just think it's a huge issue. We've got to connect to people and professionals, not having people travelling miles to.
Agreed, and I can see them more the domain, I suppose, of health boards and DHEW on the actual system access and the. But is that partnership working now about supporting the system to be ready for a more digital world?
It's very interesting. Sorry, the long question,
Alex.
Yeah, thanks, and I really endorse what people have said about sort of quality of the work. It's gone on to really develop this when you think about where we started as an organisation 6 years ago, and the level of development and the vision, and I think the real determination to make sure that we are being data informed organisation and maximising the opportunities is fantastic to see. So really well done to Sean and the team and all the support across the organisation. Just to a couple of points then, the capacity issues. Sean's explained what we're doing about that really well, but what we need to be clear about is that we're on a massive change curve here, and nobody knows where this change curve is going. So it's really difficult to predict. But what's really clear is that we are now filling a gap that was there, and people knew there was a gap but didn't know the size of the gap. And I think some of the work that we're doing now is really, really important to Welsh Government in particular, in terms of some of their national work, their policy work, Value and Sustainability Board is using a lot of that data. And I think people have been really, really impressed with the portal that we'll be showing you at the August developer session. So we are trying to be a helpful partner in that sense and not say, no, we've got this data, but we can't help flexibly look at other ways of using this or other ways of collecting data or other opportunities. So we are sort of walking into that space in a sense, but trying to keep an eye on the resource implications as well, because somebody has got to be that data sort of centre of excellence, really. I think in terms of the broader issue about digitally mature organisations, that is exactly the agenda I think that we need to be getting into, because we know that we all feel a little bit, as John has said, we feel a little bit naive and inexperienced by some of these issues, but the reality is we're all going to be working in a digital and data world, and so actually everybody's going to feel more comfortable with that. And as Topmall said many years ago, within the next 10 years, everybody is going to have a requirement for some data as part of their job, their management competencies, etc. So that piece of work that we want to set up with DHCW, that we'd also mentioned to the Director General yesterday, I think is going to be really important. And as part of that, there is something we're looking at Scotland do around board digital leadership and programmes that they've developed to do exactly what we're talking about, which is make sure that the board is confident of working in that environment, how to lead in that environment, how to provide scrutiny in that environment. So that may be something we want to actually pathfind here as a bit of a sort of guinea pig. But certainly lots going on in that space, Judy, just to assure that.
That's fine, thank you very much.
Sean, sorry.
Just a quick one following on from that, it just struck me that it might be a very good opportunity to use that as an example in our work with as a system leader in our response to the letter.
Sean, one of the things that I think will emerge is the link between the staff and the quality, and how that emerges from the data that we've got. So I think there's a very complex set of things set in train, and this describes building from the bottom up. But before long, the aspiration of people like myself would be to say, well, how do we answer the question, to what extent? Yeah. So to what extent is the quality assured, built? And I think, given our world about students and trainees, this data is really important, but absolutely fascinating if you take the lifelong learning curve and look at quality of the service that those people provide. How is that affected by the data they have access to, and how are the technologies that are, well, how much digital you need to have to adopt the new technologies? I think it's going to be considerable. So the importance of this work is parallel to how we train people, how many of what we've got, but more importantly, what do they do and to what standards? Yeah. So I'm asking everybody here now, please, to note the progress in the report. I think we're also saying thank you for the work so far, and look forward to the next year with anticipation. The chairs love the presentation, by the way. Orwell's chairs love the presentation on the data. They will become hungry beasts, and if we're going to go around digitalizing the inquiring minds around board tables, it's going to get worse. So discipline, a discipline that puts some equity and some priority into the system is going to be essential. So thank you very much. Gender item 3.3, the staff survey. Who's leading on that? Is that?
I'll hand over to
you, Rhiannon,
for the next stage.
Yeah.
Comment.
Thank you very much.
hopefully you've had a chance to take a look through the report, highlighting our progress to date in terms of important findings. Summary key findings for the 2023 staff survey. It highlights how we've shared the results with staff today and also sets out our approach to take targeted interventions for improvement across the organisation. The survey ran between October and November last year, and we received over 351 completions, representing 35.2% of our full workforce. The data was released to us in 3 stages. In February, we had our organisational responses, the full question set. April, we received more detailed data, allowing us to drill down to directorate level. And in July, we received the sanitised free text comments to some of the questions where there was opportunity to add new narrative. So we commenced our analysis of the full organisational data set and the findings of which you can see in the report. To note, there was significant positive responses across the organisation, with particular reference in the paper to our work on culture, with strong results in compassionate leadership, respect individual differences, and staff being appreciated and recognised for the work that they do. There are areas of improvement that we've identified within the overall results, particularly the impact of workforce pressures on staff health and wellbeing. And we do have a higher proportion of staff reporting working in excess of 11 hours per week, which is above the NHS Wales average. We've also taken the view that any staff reporting inappropriate behaviours of managers and colleagues should be an area of focus of us. Our staff engagement score has slightly reduced, but still remains 6% higher than the NHS Wales average. And we've highlighted in the paper how our engagement score is assessed and the enablers for good staff engagement. We undertook an analysis of the free text comments received in July, and whilst in the main they were positive, there were comments that are related to negative experiences that we analysed and deemed, and we've summarised these on page 4 of the paper. Workforce pressures, transparency and fairness in relation to recruitment and career opportunities, and supporting teams who are dealing with frontline issues are just some of the themes we saw coming out. So in the past 2 weeks, we've undertaken a further analysis to ensure our priority areas encompass the overall themes, taking into account the feedback we've had from the free text comments, and set out on page 5 of the 5 organisational improvement areas identified and high-level actions to be taken to address these priorities. So these include improving the conditions for staff to speak up, and we've just commenced a number of Speaking Up Safely roundtable discussions, having already had 50 staff contributing in attendance to openly discuss what they believe the barriers are to speaking up within the organisation. And this is a result of us seeing higher levels reporting inappropriate behaviours than we do in terms of our informal and formal casework that we see coming through. In May, we took the opportunity at our staff conference to discuss our ways of working, reviewing the emerging evidence and seeking feedback from staff, as we recognise that hybrid working, if not undertaken well, can have impact on communication flows and inter-team working and collaboration, and possibly workforce pressures. And this work will continue, and we set out a plan to our executive team to improve our hybrid working arrangements. We're currently reviewing our management and leadership development offer and have opened applications for the latest management development programmes this week. And this is because we recognise the essential role our managers play in shaping our climate and culture at HAW. Work is already underway on enhancing our recruitment processes with the introduction of training last month for recruiter managers, and we'll also be reviewing our access to learning and appraisal processes and practice. And finally, we'll be rolling out our team-based working programme that we've worked alongside Bwrdd on to support teams embedding the principles of effective team-based working. As Sian alluded to, we have ensured that our directorates are supported, and they are looking at their local directorate data to highlight any outliers in addition to those organisational priorities that we highlighted in the report, and we're supporting colleagues with the themes that are coming out from those. Sian alluded to one specifically within the directorates. Digital Directorate. And just another a point to note that in terms of relation to sharing the staff survey findings, in March we published a full response to the question set on our intranet pages. In May we highlighted the key findings from the staff survey data set at staff conference, and after today our intention is to share the improvement plan as we discussed today forward. It is an annual survey, so we will be running the survey again in October and November. So this will allow us to have a look to see whether or not there are any trends analysis that we can take forward from year on year. It's going to be a consistent question set, so we'll be able to analyse that and monitor our improvements over time. And a final point to note that the RES actually is the Workforce Race Equality Standard, which is a key action within the Anti-Racist Wealth Action Plan. The Status Survey acts as one data source for the RES. And as an organisation, we received our RES report last month, and we'll be bringing an update on the RES or HLW, the associated actions into board later into the autumn. Chair, that's what I'd like to share today. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for the paper, which was really helpful. I think it's really impressive the level of response that AGIW received compared with the national rate of response. It is actually outstanding. And it's an indicator that people felt able to respond to the anonymous survey. I think it would be helpful just to tease out what sanitised comments means. It could be misinterpreted, so it'd be helpful just to explain what that is. And my other point really relates to speaking up safely. I think there's an indication that the speaking up safely process, which is relatively, has yet to be embedded, and it's good to hear that there are now workshops in place. And we'll doubtless come back to speaking up safely later in the agenda. I think we have to be ambitious that people do feel able to speak up and not wait for an anonymous survey. And I think that for me, the speaking up safely process aligns with our compassionate leadership approach in any event. So I think I would encourage you to continue with the work to make people comfortable with raising issues as they arise rather than wait. But if I could have an explanation around sanitised comments, that would be great.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, in relation to the sanitised comments, that is the exercises undertaken by the external third party to remove any identifiable comments. So if, for example, a member of staff mentioned by name or specifics, that would then allow individuals to be identified as part of that, so to protect the anonymity of the survey.
Sanitise isn't the right word, is it?
No, that's pseudonymised.
Anonymised?
Yeah. Pseudonymised.
That would be more reassuring.
Yeah, thank you very much for the report and the way you presented it. And I particularly welcome the fact there's going to be consistent questions, because it's just, having been involved in the start of this many years ago, the exchange of questions doesn't allow you to look at trends. Just a point really, and this is something you'll get to learn about me. If I see things about actions, I do like to see a plan with dates. So when you come back with your reports, if it can be very clear, and I don't expect everything to be achieved, you know, within the year or before the next survey, but just so as a board we're clear, you know, what assurance can we take from the action you've taken to make those improvements? But it was very helpful paper, so thank you very much.
Alex?
You want thanks Rhiannon for the presentation, Ben. I think this is a sort of a first time for us with this process, and we've learned an awful lot from it. So it's very much a baseline. And as Jane said, we should be really ambitious, I think, in HLW about how we use this and how we continue to build on this. And that's definitely the intention of us within the organisation. I think for me, it's really highlighted the critical role of the people occupying management roles across the organisation, which is the same in any organisation. But I think some of the areas for improvement really highlight that we need to invest in those people to make sure that they've got the skills and the support and the tools to do their jobs effectively, because they are the critical link in all of this. I think the shift from an in-person office-based model to a hybrid model is something which has probably not been accompanied all of the time, and this is common, I think, across all organisations with a change in the way of working. So there's very much a theme there for us. But I think certainly one of the things Rhiannon and I have been speaking about is how we set up a more coherent management development programme for HAW over the next 12 months to support our managers.
For me, these staff surveys are about the uncomfortable bits.
Yeah.
And there's some very, very stark examples over the last year in public bodies. And, disappointing behaviour almost invariably hides in plain sight. And so I think how we behave as board members, as a board, how we show respect, how we show support, but most importantly, I think how we show how much we value people's contributions and their work. And I think those are things that are really so simple and they sound so jargonese, but actually when we thank someone for doing their work, or we recognise how that little piece of work that someone has focused on has enabled a whole load of other things. I think that's a really important thing that we as a board need to do and highlight. So the survey, I like the fact that there are set questions and you can watch trends, but I also like the fact that we can react. And I think that goes to the thing, what's the action plan? But there's also, how do we feel about it? That's a reaction, and we cannot be we just cannot be complacent about this. If you want to have systems working well, and if you want to have people who are thriving in their lives, then we have to listen. Can't always do something very directly about it, but we have to hear it. So I welcome this, really welcome this. And we need to make sure that we don't just get more people engaged, but we've actually nuanced what they're saying. So I'm asking us to receive, consider, note the contents of the report, and that we can take some assurance that the results have been analysed and that the plans will be in place to address actions that will result in hopefully future improvements in the staff exercise, in the staff experience. And I'm asking you to note that further updates on the workforce race equality standard and progress against the actions in this paper will be submitted to the board during autumn. And I think I heard another action, it's not here, and that's about the importance of speaking up safely in conjunction with the staff survey. So perhaps some kind of alignment. Hopefully people do feel safe, but how do we know? So I think those actions are really should be seen together as complementary. Is everybody okay with that? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you and the team for all the hard work. And we know you're absolutely bursting with energy for the next October run of this. Yeah?
We are, yeah, thank you. Yes.
I will, at the next chairs meeting, I will be encouraging everybody to drive the importance of this survey in their home organisations. I don't think I'll have to push very hard. Thank you very much. 3.4, Urgent and Emergency Care Programme Update. And it's you, Glenn, is it?
It is, but I'm going to pass to Amanda, if that's okay, to just...
It's not like you.
Amanda and the team done all the work, so it's an opportunity for them to take credit.
Okay, thanks, Jim. Thank you, Chairman. And just by way of introduction to the board, my name is Amanda Howard. I'm the Assistant Director for National Programmes within HEIW. Just to put that role into some sort of context, we've got a number of high priority national programmes that are set out by the Welsh Government and the Cabinet Secretary around delivery of our healthcare services across Wales. So one of the key challenges, opportunities, if you like, is our interaction and engagement and working in partnership with our NHS executive colleagues who hold the rein on the national programmes. And I think it's safe to say that those relationships by and large are good partnership working arrangements. There are some that could be better, and we're working really hard to address that. But I do think that urgent and emergency care is one of the ones that we feel that we're really connected with the national strategic programme around the key priorities. So making the assumption that the board has read the paper, just to draw out some key points, if you like. So in February 2022, the Welsh Government published its national policy around delivery of urgent emergency care services across Wales, and developed a series of 6 goals that were absolute key priorities across the whole pathway of urgent and emergency care. But more importantly, associated with that was a set of quality statements in terms of what our public can expect when they're accessing our urgent and emergency care system, when they need to access the urgent and emergency care system, and the quality of service that they should expect to receive. So it took some time from the development of that policy to the development of the delivery plan. Clearly, there was some time and thought that needed to go into what that actually meant in terms of delivery and implementation to see the improvement and transformation across our UEC urgent emergency care system that was required. So of this year, we now have a 6 goals urgent and emergency care delivery plan from our national strategic programme colleagues. The paper sets out the 6 goals and the key priorities. We are there as an active partner in relation to the workforce changes, training and education that is required to underpin delivery of the service, and certainly working on some key priorities around advanced practice and developing a framework around advanced practice. We're also just about to embark on a palliative care competency framework to support end-of-life care, which we know is an absolute key priority across Wales, working in partnership to do that. There's a real focus around clinically safe alternatives to hospital and making sure we've got the right infrastructure to be able to deliver that service safely and with confidence to our public, and not losing the great work that we had to do at pace and rigour through the pandemic in terms of remote assessment and accessing services in an alternative way. So that's really important. And then into kind of the infrastructure around secondary care and patients who require effective discharge planning from admission and avoiding deconditioning to ensure that our patients get the absolute right acute care that they need whilst they're in the hospital, and then when they are clinically able to do so, they're discharged in a safe and comprehensive way in terms of their care planning. So a lot of work is going on in that area around deconditioning, how we get the message out to our health boards and our staff on the ground, and looking at ensuring we are going back to basics, if you like, in terms of caring for patients and not just making them well whilst they're in hospital with us. So where we are today, a workshop was held with our national strategic colleagues in July, which was facilitated by Sian and Lynn as our exec leads for the programme. And I think it was a really helpful workshop. We took some time, a number of hours out of the day to really go through what the 6 goals, the detail, what we anticipate as key priorities around delivery and implementation. And also it was an opportunity for us to showcase the great work that we do in HEIW and how we can support the national programmes to deliver on the Welsh Government priorities from a workforce perspective. And I think that was really well received. There was a real recognition of the work that we do, the work that the national programme colleagues do, and how we can come together in partnership to be able to make improvements there. So there was a real focus around upskilling of staff to be able to manage risk and uncertainty, and what we know is a complex and demanding environment, and always has been it's ever more challenging. But how we could support them around workforce modelling, using the right data to make informed decisions. And by that I mean kind of the clinical data, not just workforce data, that enables us to make some really robust capacity and demand modelling assumptions, if you like, looking at the training pipeline of the medical workforce, potentially where the gaps are and how we can use our advanced workforce and upskill them to be able to support some of that. One of the key things that was coming out in terms of particularly around the frailty agenda and ensuring that our patients don't decondition when they come into hospital was around the leadership and culture, and how not so much a fatigue in the workforce system, but really just going back to basics around care and deconditioning. So there's going to be a big piece of work in relation to that, and really changing the culture in terms of it's everybody's responsibility to get behind this and really make some positive changes in those environments. And finally, the quality assurance of training placement. So just making sure that we're offering the right training, the right mentorship, supervision, and that we attract and retain workforce in this area. So one of the main risks around all of this really important work, again, I know it's been mentioned this morning, but it is a capacity issue. I've got quite a small team. There's a huge number of programmes within the Welsh Government, all of which they are a priority and they are within their own right, but it's about having the capacity to be able to support and support effectively. And some of the ways in which we're overcoming that, I mean, from a formal perspective, we absolutely have to ensure that we're kind of mapping the work that we do, and then ensuring that we've got the right priorities going into our IMTP, but also working with the programmes to see if there's any potential of them being able to fund some resource to come in and do specific pieces of work that will support delivery of their programme, and work very much in partnership in that way. I'll stop there.
So, this is like my special subject. So, this particular area is of such labyrinthine complexity that you have to go out of your way to map it. Means it's very difficult. The paper's fine. Paper, from my point of view, gives a good version of where we're at. What's become patently clear to me that when some foolish person wrote set in the direction, that there was a description of a thing called a pull mechanism as opposed to a push mechanism. And what we've got here is the most complex push mechanism. And the resilience in the community to actually pull before people are pushed and then pull them out after they've been pushed, I think requires much more. But there's a very basic question I got to ask, and I don't know whether it's possible to answer. To what extent is the system balanced? So we've got planned care that's heated up like for Christmas, and we've got urgent and emergency care, which is on a constant high burn, but will go up a gear again at the worst of times when we're trying to hit the planned care targets, and the staff are in the middle of this. So what's the effect of all of that on our training, on our opportunity to educate and support? So I think there's a set of lenses across these national programmes about having a view of what are the conditions for good training. Are we missing opportunities? And, so I'm rambling now, but there are a whole load of things that this paper started to hit me about the head with.
Yeah, you should. I think we have got a bit of clarity on that because we have got standards for the environment. That's what we monitor quality against. So I think we are looking at that as our normal business as usual processes, and that does identify the areas where there are capacity issues, and you think about those, and we've flagged some of those constraints on the education and training plan, or they come up through Tom's process around the quality management of the graduate medical and dental training. So I think that's probably a bigger question than Amanda's piece of work.
Yeah.
But I think that is core business for us.
Our general practitioners get very little exposure to urgent and emergency care in out of hours, for instance. And yet it's a massive throughput and there's huge opportunity, particularly around telephone triaging with things like 111, which could be controlled environments. So I just like us to take every opportunity. What's the role of simulation going forward to train people, you know, in heightened system of triaging? That's going to be every day. So I just think that there's something in it for us as an organisation, as well as us supporting the work. And everybody in training is working. Is debate, you know.
Yeah, thanks. Well done. Nice to see you in person.
Me too.
I found this a really helpful paper, so thank you. I also found it an incredibly frustrating paper, not what you're doing, but the whole programme. So similar to what you said, Chair, that we do like to complicate things in Wales, and this is so complicated, and it's been overcomplicated in my view. And so I was therefore thinking, where's the gap that potentially HEIW can really move this forward? Because this has been sitting since 2022. The talk, when I see talk of setting up another group to review this, that and the other, I just go cold, because that means delay. There are some initiatives in here like APPs, and Helen, I know we've had experience of this. They are tried and tested models. They're good. People want to do those jobs. I don't understand why we need another group to keep reviewing how we do it. Trusted assessors, I'll talk to you outside, because that's a very positive spin on the reality of trusted assessors from my perspective and experience of chairing the regional partnership group. So perhaps we could pick that up outside. But I think there's a big gap here, which comes to none of this is going to move forward unless there is real cultural change about the way services are delivered, the way staff work. And I wonder, therefore, is that a gap that HEIW could be driving much more? Because I'm not sure the way the programme's set up at the moment is going to do that. Because things like, I use the APPs, they're only successful where you've got the rest of the multidisciplinary team open to a different way of working.
Absolutely.
And I use that example of all sorts of different roles and experiences in here. So the paper's great. The update I found incredibly helpful. But I just wonder if there's more HIW can push at this to make a difference to the population who don't want to go into hospital. They have to, and if they're there, they don't want to stay longer than they need to. And in the way it is all set up on a Christmas view at all, it just feels we've lost why we're doing this in this myriad of groups and programmes. And so frustration, but not with you.
No, I completely understand, Judith. And having worked in England for the last 10 years, I know about the trusted assessor challenges and things. So, I mean, from a workforce perspective, we're there to support the programme. I guess it's difficult, isn't it, in terms of stripping some of it back. So the conversation that I've been having this morning around deconditioning is that the national team are going in and saying, we can't understand why the health board's not implementing this. You know, it's really straightforward, red to green, safer, all of those things. And I just think sometimes it's about going back to basics, isn't it? Because there's initiative just fatigue out there, if you like, and just really honing in and saying, going back to basics, and they have staff got the basic fundamentals to support them to deliver that kind of basic care. So like Chris says, you could go on and on and on all day about urgent emergency care and know what needs to happen, and it's just so very difficult. And again, in my previous role, I would be sitting at the A&E delivery board and heightened escalation across a region, and colleagues are around the table saying, oh, let us know if you need any help. Well, actually they're a portion of your patient social care that are in the hospital. So it is about that cultural shift, but it's not just a cultural shift within departments, as I've talked about, in terms of providing training and education at that local level. It's a whole cultural shift that needs to happen.
And I suppose that's where
challenge.
Back it up, and where are we? Where can?
I know I kicked this. Yeah. I know I kicked this can over, but
I promised myself I wouldn't speak on it.
You're going to win.
I'll keep it very brief. If I could wax lyrical for days on it. I suppose just to bring it and really good piece of work and great. Thank you, Amanda. Two very quick questions. Where are social care wrapped into this national programme, and how heavily involved are the local authorities? And the second point was about the financial issues that you say there are no real financial costs, but I guess that that's at the root of some of the problem here, the resources. So I guess it's trying to be quite clear about what our role is here. It could be anything, couldn't it, and everything. And there's a danger that it morphs into our responsibility. So I think I haven't quite got clear in my head what we are expecting to do in this.
Yeah, I think my experience of being involved in this, and Sean's been involved as well. She might want to come in over the last couple of years. It's such a broad programme. It's so complex that really all we can do is focus on some specific solutions. We aren't taking that overarching approach to this one because where would you start and where would you end? It's like boiling the ocean to some extent. So, but targeting things like the palliative care competency framework, or the advanced practitioners, or the remote clinical decision, actually, at least you think with those things you can make a bit of an impact in certain areas. I'll absolutely agree with Judith's point around, and again, I do remember some of my experiences so well in the urgent and emergency care situation that I was in for 9 years, and there is a cultural shift needed, but that's very easy to say, much more difficult to identify how you actually boil that down to actions you can take. So we've had the conversation in HNW about, are we giving people the right training in the first place? If actually then what's happening is, is there a risk averse approach then to people which sees hospitals as being safe and primary care communities safe and risky, and how do we change that around? So, we are providing more training now to people at undergraduate level about, how that should happen differently. Are we training our doctors effectively to work in that multidisciplinary environment, which is so important from a frailty point of view? So I think there are things that we need to be considering from a training and education perspective, but I don't think we can take responsibility for the whole cultural piece around this, because actually we all feel it, but it's very difficult to translate that into actions. And, I would absolutely agree on the complexity of the programmes. This is a point that has been made many times, because when you add them all up together, not just the urgent and emergency care programme, you add them all up together, that's difficult for the health boards to respond to effectively. As you say, the danger is the fragmented approach. I think it is a fragmented approach, but it's hopefully the fragments are being effective in themselves, but it's not a coherent approach and solution to the whole. So I suppose what I'm saying.
In culinary terms, it's a deconstructed eaten mess.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to make 2 comments. And it's particularly in terms of the urgent care practitioner competency framework, talked about issues of capacity, and Chris briefly noted simulation. I don't require an answer, just for you to note, I think we need to be aligning a lot of this work, or some of this work, particularly in terms of competency around our simulation strategy. And particularly because you talk about multidisciplinary team building, multidisciplinary education. simulation and our simulation track, which is absolutely what that's about. And again, you give some very good examples of system impact. You know, you talk about one which is called verification of death, I think it is there. So there's a number of examples, and as a board, we're keen to demonstrate impact. We need to keep in our line of sight where we're having system impact. And I thought this paper can give good examples of that.
Lisa?
Just to come back to Jane's answer in terms of how and complementing what Alex has said as well. And if you think of it, there is been some moves coming through our workforce plans as well. So if I look at the nursing workforce plans, we've recognised the need to improve that community infrastructure as well, and therefore that education that goes alongside it in order to have sort of registrants coming out directly into the community to understand how do we prevent people going into hospital in the first place. So that is the pull. I'm working with Amanda. Deconditioning, yes, we've all been on that journey, and even verification of death. I think I've done that 10 times. And it's easy to develop a tool. It's the implementation and the actual acceptance and the use of the tool. And to be fair to all the initiatives that are put in place, you're absolutely right, Jill. It is about having not just social care involved in that, but we have got a situation with the independent sector in terms of care homes. That is the challenge with verification of death, and we've been there many, many times. So we are supporting these initiatives through a number of our workforce plans in enhancing our community services, registrants coming out directly into those arenas to stop that input.
It was interesting that Alex said, what are the specifics in our role for HEW, and there were just a couple of really tiny points in respect to this paper, but I appreciated having the overall update. One was around something we touched on about the remote decision making module and how important that is. And I think in relation to some of the more recent negative press that's been around online consultations, the idea that we get that up and running is really important to me, and pleased to see the timescales around that. And then the other one, again, something that had come up in the Education and Equality Committee recently was the fill rate for geriatric medicine was not where we like it to be. And again, given our older people's and frailty agenda, that's something we need to be keeping on top of. So, but very helpful to have it, Amanda. I know there's no magic wand. There was done years ago, like the rest of us.
Look, thank you for that. Right, and Sian, sorry.
Yeah, it was just that point about the geriatric, the links to our pipeline, what we could be doing, the role of it was a real strong theme through the workshop, isn't it, around that, so that linking back. And I think just to echo, having been involved in this now for the last 2 years, we've taken quite as Alex described, a tactical approach to really helping in core areas where there was clarity, but in partnership to that, I think you can look at maybe the primary care workforce plan, which is a more strategic approach, and the two managing in tandem, as well as maybe the mental health and the workforce. So we're coming at this from a system perspective in a different way, while offering real value in the immediate actions that we've taken, where things are much more tangible as the programme matures. And it's certainly been a maturing programme over the last.
It's how those things are gearing. Right, that's where I'm struggling a bit. Right. And how do they all gear? And that's and that's not in our gift, but actually to make what we do really effective, there needs to be a degree of gearing. And without that degree of gearing, we'll have a list of good things we do which won't have maximum impact. And that's just an observation. All right. So we're asked to note the impact of the work that we're doing. Not the progress on the work we're doing, and I think the report was really welcome. And can we have another one in 6 months?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. 3.6 Strategic Pharmacy Workforce Plan Update. Tom.
Thank you.
Firstly, apologies from Margaret Allen, our pharmacy dean, who would have been in on it as other commitments today. So you've got me. I won't do it as eloquently as she has, but I'll try and sort of take you through where things are at. So the purpose of the paper in front of you is to update on the strategic pharmacy workforce plan, 2-year implementation phase, a year in on this plan. So for some context, many of you here will be aware of the broader work that's going on in relation to pharmacy, and this overlaps considerably with that in terms of this whole pipeline issue that we talked about, underpinned by data, the work that we're doing in terms of changing undergraduate pharmacy. That's going to be a 4-year linked in with the foundation, and you'll be aware, as is mentioned in this paper, that foundation accreditation was achieved by the Pharmaceutical Council earlier this year without any real conditions, so a really positive response to the multi-sector programme that we're doing there. So starting from that end, however, many problems downstream and underpinning the reasons for this workforce plan with considerable evidence, increasing evidence of burnout, really quite startling levels of self-perceived burnout in the pharmacy teams. Higher than we see in many of the other professions where it's also an issue. The workforce pressures that result from that, the loss of satisfaction, the attrition and the vacancies, and ultimately the impact that we start to see on the medicine management issues for patients. So those are the sort of fundamental reasons underpinning this. The pharmacy services are incredibly complex. Multiple sectors, NHS, private, 320 odd employers across that system in Wales. So any plan is very much a partnership exercise and requires all of that. So you'll be aware, and Sian's just outlined some of the other strategic workforce plans that we have developed and in development and implementation phase. I think in terms of insurance, there is considerable coordination across those plans. These are not happening in isolation. So fundamentally in the consultation and engagement phase of this plan, alignment with the other plans, particularly the primary care strategic workforce plan, where a number of the actions and themes overlap. Clearly, alignment, consistency of communication with partners, and avoiding of duplication and ensuring value of use of resource underpins all of that. So in terms of that context, funding approval to support this plan, that actually was a band 8A and a band 6 coming out from the HEIW funding, and Chief Pharmaceutical Officer, who's been a very strong partner in putting into the development of this, also secured Welsh Government funding for a band 8A to support the directors of pharmacy, who are key partners in implementing many of these actions. It's not possible, as we've discussed in other areas for HEIW, we take a leadership and work closely with those partners to ensure the implementation of these actions, but we can't deliver them in isolation. So there's a lot of focus going on in that partnership working across the board. So we outlined some of those in the appendix, the various actions that are there. A lot of the themes are around the education and training. Career progression came out quite a lot in the consultation for this, for the broader pharmacy teams, where feeling of blocks in the system, lack of clarity about their progression, lack of support for their development. So a considerable amount of focus clearly sits on our responsibility in terms of that education training and working closely with those partners to ensure those career development opportunities are in place. As we discussed, it's not quite training people if there aren't appropriate jobs for them at the end of them. So many of the actions involved resource development to support that. A lot of these are around tools, others are around the data, which a lot of work has gone on with Sian's team in this again, which has been excellent because we've started that education to employment pipeline data, which will continue to mature into 2025 to inform the implementation of this plan. And that is important for the reasons we discussed many times today, not only in terms of understanding what's happening, but also to inform our planning function. So I'm very supportive of all the developments and grateful to Sian's team for the effort they put in to get this started. So going on to the questions that I'm sure people will have, which really the so what, when will we see impact of this? I think a number of the actions where we have direct control will start to be completed, as you can see, towards autumn and winter, and we'll update the board on progress in relation to those. In terms of measuring the impact, the so what in relation to those, as you can see from the complexity of the system I've outlined, the partnership working in different areas there, and those core initial parameters, which will be the markers of success, which are reduced rates of burnout, reduced vacancies, increased numbers, and that retention pipeline that we've touched on today. That's the ambition in terms of what we're going to see. There'll be various markers of impact in terms of recruitment to our foundation programs, satisfaction with those training, but ultimately the impact of this will be measured by those high-level changes. That has to be the ambition we have in delivery. We've outlined some of the partnership working that goes on in relation to governance. We did have, I've also, in terms of the risks and the financial, there was a slight delay. Apologies, in the financial implications section, we used the word recruitment freeze. We didn't have a recruitment freeze, but in the finance picture climate of last year, there was a delay in new jobs. And so that band aid, that was purely planning in terms of financial position and ensuring the resource was available. So there was a delay in recruiting the band 8A and the band 6 roles internally. But the work progressed within the existing team and the structures that we had whilst that happened, and those people are now in place and appointed, which will enable some of the other work to progress at speed. You'll notice it's in the context of a number of levers that Welsh Government and publications that Welsh Government have produced, including independent reports. So clearly with the timing, also improvement to ensure this aligns closely with that. The directors of pharmacies are being inundated with requirements and actions that come out of those plans. Pleased to say the ones that have come out through that collaboration and consultation exercise align very closely in terms of the needs for the workforce, so there hasn't had to be a major change in direction around those actions. So we look, as I say, there'll be a bit of patience in terms of measuring and seeing the impact, but we're on track in terms of completing the actions that were agreed across all the sector of the pharmacy teams by June next year. We intend to keep the board updated, particularly as we're getting into that phase where we'll start to see out on those actions. And I will pause there for any questions.
Good stuff. Any comments, questions, John?
Thank you, Chair. Tom, thanks very much. I'm Mark for the update paper. You've answered some of my questions and you've provided some elements of assurance around particularly timelines. I read the paper with the Appendix 2, which is the action plan. The paper, first question, the paper or the action plan talks about a risk register. Is there anything on that risk register that you should bring to the attention of the board because it's not included in the papers? That's my first question that we should be aware of. And from the evidence that's provided in the updates within the Appendix 2, I'm still unsure, and you haven't addressed it in your introduction. I'm unsure around Action 22, I think it is, which is around the placements availability. So I still feel a little bit of risk there, and I'm not sure the update provides us with the detail. It talks about an increase, but then it talks about availability and pressure availability and teams not being able to identify. So if you will give us some update on that. And then the other one I was unsure about was the one in relation to workforce intelligence, which I can't quite remember the Action 7, was it? It talks about the need for us to have a dashboard to identify community pharmacists. We've got that dashboard for NHS pharmacists at the moment, and the document doesn't provide us exactly where we are. It says that there's a prototype, but not a timeline as to when we're going to start using that. says it's going to be completed by December this year. So an update on that, because I think that's important also. I should say I welcome the work on rural recruitment. That action, I think, is absolutely important. And it is also good to see the work that you're doing around consultant pharmacists and also the engagement for the plan. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, John. Yes, no, there's a positive direction of travel in terms of the development of the consultant pharmacist role and an enthusiasm across the system. So it's good to see those people achieve the credentials at this stage. With regards to the risk register, there isn't anything else that you need to be aware of in terms of where it is. The prioritisation exercise that happened last autumn in relation to the Welsh Government publications and the delayed recruitment of our individuals to support this has shifted some of the priorities around. So some of them are flagged as amber, where there's more work to do, which is outlined in that appendix. The ones with green, the team are still confident in terms of meeting the deadlines as they stand. I'll have to check with Margaret around the December 24 your specific questions around the dashboard, because obviously data is important. Challenge with the community pharmacies is because of the different sections within which they work. There is an enthusiasm to be part of that, but in the context of the pressures on data and delivery of that, we will revisit that to check on where we are. Clearly is an important output in terms of the success of this plan, because without data that informs across all these different sectors, we're going to have real challenge in terms of measuring that success and impact demonstrates. And then I think your other question was about placements. So placements, like in all our training areas, are a challenge. The undergraduate placements, which we call funding and support, have a supportive role in developing in partnership with those universities. There is excellent work going on in that and in identifying those placements. That's the action you were talking about, had the issue of the supervisors, is that what
yes, I think what it said, the
placements with the designated
supervisors and mentors, and that's where the challenge is. There's not the people. I think they can identify areas, but the activities around the people.
Yes. So there's a huge amount of work that's going on to increase, and it's fundamental to this plan, to increase the number of people who are trained to be supervisors in all areas, and they are different in the different areas and programs we look at. So if you look at independent prescribing, one of the challenges is people applying for that identify their own designated supervisors, and that can be a barrier, which we're looking at how we can support that. But actually, the statistics show that that's a very small number of all the people who've got independent prescribing. And then with regards to those other placements, the trajectory of an increase of people willing to be engaged as supervisors continues to increase. And that's through the engagement program we're doing as part of this plan, which was already starting before this plan because of our training developments that I alluded to in the introduction around the undergrad linking in with the foundation. Core to that is embedding trainer development.
Yeah, thank you. So it's another small point, Tom, thank you, because you answered most of the questions that I had. And it was around, you spoke about the issue of burnout with the pharmacy staff. And on Action 4, there was a catalogue of workforce solutions, which were, in part, it was to share good practice and to consider how to reduce workforce pressures. And I note in that this action is now closed, green, but that catalogue is being shared widely, but it will only be available for partners to refer to until March 2025. And I wondered what the cut-off was now, if it's got good practice for people to use, why there was a specific cut-off March 25.
My understanding is that it becomes it'll be part of all of their organisations at that point. I will check with Dawn in terms of clarity of what that means, but I don't think this is a hard cut off that the tools that are related to that are disappeared from the use for the workforce.
It just may be the way it's worded, and it seemed to imply it was only available until that point. But thank you.
Tom, the independent prescriber journey is quite a journey. Mm-hmm. Quite a lot of work. So for me, some of the data we need to have in mind, because I can't see it just stopping with pharmacy. I think it's going to be become much more prevalent. I think it's the numbers that are prescribing ready, the numbers that are prescribing practicing, and how are we going to maintain people's competence to prescribing over time? And I think those are big plinth questions. The report was great. Got a snapshot. We got more or less can say we're on track. There'll always be wobbles, but my view is that once we've got people up there prescribing, prescribing can become a pressure, can become especially if you don't keep up to date. And is it the regulator that's responsible for that? Who is responsible for ensuring people's ongoing competence over years?
It depends on the profession.
Well, that's the part of the problem. If there isn't a system that covers independent prescribing, then so these aren't questions. These are questions for the future that perhaps we need to have an eye on now, because the number of independent prescribers is going to be huge.
Yes, completely agree. And that is, from 2026, we can see pharmacists coming out onto registration with independent prescribing qualification. So it's not going to be just something that's developed for existing post-registration staff. All of them coming out will be that. So that issue of maintaining competency applied in the workplace is something that is being looked at and has to be embedded across all those partners, because it's closer than we think in terms of not losing skills.
So if someone qualifying 27, is that right? The first year?
Starting out from 26 on.
Right, so someone in 27 is prescribing ready. Are they going to be in a system that allows them to be prescribing active? Yeah, so there's not the regulation, but the oversight of the system upon which they prescribe or in which they prescribe. And then there's their own individual maintenance of efficiency, effectiveness, and safety. So, and if we do that by different professions, we're going to end up with another camel with 16 humps. There's got to be some kind of hand that holds all the strings of the balloon on this. Otherwise, we're going to be in trouble. So I think one of the things as HEIW we can do is not only look at the training now, but the ongoing training that's going to be necessary. And just like any other prescriber, how do we maintain professional confidence? Okay, so we've asked to note the paper. You should thank them for the paper as well. That was, well done. 3.7, Social Care Wales grant authorisation. Are we giving away money again?
We are, yes, but to social care.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. This paper, as you said, relates to approving grant funding to Social Care Wales. It is part of implementing the strategic mental health workforce. It's been in place for a couple of years. The reason it's come to the board is given the financial value, which is £491,500 this year. It exceeds our financial limits as executives to sign this off, and therefore it needs to come to the board for approval. This is an annual grant funding that goes to Social Care Wales and covers a number of things which are set out in the attached papers, but it includes things like pre and post registration training for social workers. So it's the element of the mental health workforce plan that relates to social care.
So we're acting as a conduit.
We are effectively, yes. So looking really for the board to approve that funding transfer, which we do via our grant funding mechanism in HIW.
Are there any questions? Are you happy to approve the transfer of £491,500 from the Strategic Mental Health Workforce Plan budget by HUW grant mechanism to contribute to the facilitation of actions detailed in this. Here we go. Come on. My mind.
Yes, we all agree.
Yes, you agree. Thank you very much.
Have a break now.
Yes. Can I suggest we take a 5-minute comfort break?
Yes.
And move some limbs.
10 minutes.
Croeso nôl pawb. So here we go. Agenda item 4.1, duty of quality annual report. Lisa.
Diolch Patrick Cadeirydd. Actually, I would like to sort of introduce Maria Roberts, who is the Assistant Director of Quality here at HAW. Maria actually joined us at the beginning of June. Yes. And obviously, as a result of our duty of quality, we are about to publish our first annual quality report, and I'm very grateful actually for Maria's work actually in producing this report for you. So I'm going to ask Maria to give you actually the key issue that is in that report.
Thank you, Lisa. So yes, this is the first annual policy report. As you'll be aware, the duty came into force in April 2023, and this is a statutory requirement of all NHS bodies and the Welsh ministers actually to produce an annual quality report. So we've made sure that we've covered off the broad expected content in terms of the report. There's no set template, so organisations are allowed their creative freedom, if you like, to be able to share their quality story and their journey with their population and their stakeholders. So the content is largely based on information from various sources, including directorate end-of-year service reviews and internal engagement events related to quality. So it really is setting out our story in terms of where we've been with the duty of quality and where we're going with it. Our colleagues in design and translation are imminently commencing work to prepare for a final version to be presented to the annual general meeting in September. And our comms colleagues are going to be assisting us with some stakeholder mapping to ensure that we distribute the report to appropriate people who need to see it. We've had some very helpful feedback from colleagues along the way as we've been preparing the report regarding how we can communicate what we're great at in terms of quality in the organisation, where we need to improve, because it is an expectation that we'll have a balanced report between sharing where we've got great news to share, but also where we have some challenges. This is really very much about openness and transparency in terms of our quality story and our quality journey. And so we want to make sure that we're providing an informative quality snapshot, and we're very aware that we need to be able to do that in a way that really lifts the report off the page, and that we can share that in an engaging way for different types of people if we need to be able to see the information. And so I'll stop there really, because as we've noted, you will have read the report. It's information that has been through education policy committee previously, or a board previously, so it is really a bringing together of all of that information into one source and setting out where we currently are and what we need to do next in terms of our quality journey.
Thank you very much. So we've all had a good look at this. We've seen it right from its inception, really. The work. Have we got any comments up? Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be brief.
Sorry.
So I welcome the document, but I think we need to challenge ourselves even more in our duty quality and ensuring that we lead this particular area. And I welcome the statement that's at the end of the document around enabling standards, where we state that we're going to revisit and reshape our approach to research, evaluation and quality improvement. The reason I say that, because within the document we talk about 5 areas, start of the document, that we're involved in. I would say underpinning a 6th box, underpinning all that should be research and evaluation, because that is what that will then direct our decisions, inform our decisions in terms of our duty within this report. So I know the chief executive is looking at our research strategy, and my challenge would be to ensure that there is synergy between our research and innovation strategy and embedding KY within our organisation and with what we do, and then our duty of quality to inform. It's a complex work.
Thank you, John. Any other comments?
Yeah.
Sorry,
That's all right. just briefly. I think it's a really good report. So and it does read really well. I suppose going forward, I would be particularly interested in seeing a little bit more around the equitable lens and the statements here about considering the needs of all parts of Wales. There's quite a bit about equity of access, but I'm thinking more about the delivery of the services for that part of Wales, and therefore the people who are based in those parts of Wales who are delivering services. So maybe a bit more on that going forward. But it's really good. It's a good read as well. Whoever's authored it, it's without the template. That's very good.
But I was going to pay a compliment actually. It doesn't read like one of these tick in the box in the box reports. It actually feels a little bit like HEIW. Yeah, in fact, it feels very HEIW. And quality, we had a long debate about what quality was. And I think the value in having that space, I'm glad we weren't spoon-fed, this is what you need to do. I'm really glad of that. And I think the work that's gone on to create the ethos of this focus that we're giving, I think it was well worth it. When you read the report, I think it's everything can be better, everything can be improved, and there are different lenses you can apply. But as well as place, I think in terms of access and where quality reaches, I think the important thing is that we look at where quality hasn't reached. You know, and that may be specific groups of people. But what a thing to have for our first report. I feel quite happy to let the public and our partners read this and to receive their comments to see how we can build the work and then the report next year. So, you know, this is a perfect example of a learning organisation needing to learn, and we're demonstrating what we got so far. So, not bad.
Oh, I've got more than adequate today. But can I just add to that, Julia? And it's interesting what you say, and I do take on what you're saying about the team. And I don't use the word hard to reach, because actually I think it's actually places actually where we seldom listen and hear from. I think it's not actually about them, it's actually about what we do to reach out to them. So it's not hard to reach. They're not hard to reach. You just don't listen to what they're saying. So let's turn that tide and actually do that. But that's actually very positive, helpful comments.
Yeah, great first report. Thank you for everything to pulled it together. My lens, and I'm pulling it out, is the student and training voice.
Yeah.
Talk specifically about, you know, how we can consolidate that and bring it forward so that we've got that information listening to our students and trainees, and I think that's absolutely critical for the next part.
Okay, so we're asked to receive the annual quality report 23-24, and I'm asking you to note and approve the content of the report in order to prepare for presentation at the annual general meeting in September 2024. Yes? Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you very much. So, Director of Finance report. We got any money?
We've got money. Yes, we've got money and we're spending it.
Less than last year.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. So finance report here covers the first quarter of this year, but also our forecast for the rest of the year. So if I just quickly update on the revenue position, we're currently reporting a deficit of about £350,000 after 3 months. Yeah, deficit. That you'll see in the paper, there are a number of reasons for that, but one of the things that's driving that at the moment is the fact that we've recruited more international students this year. That comes with it sort of a higher level of travel and related costs that we're seeing coming through, and important when we're looking at how we're commissioning our courses, that we understand some of those associated costs. So we're seeing that coming through at the moment. Obviously, we know that during the course of the year, the position on our commissioning budget changes. The autumn cohort will be particularly important in understanding what that means for our financial position. We've used some sort of soft intelligence around application numbers, offer numbers, to start constructing some of the financial risks and opportunities that you can see in one of the appendices. And we're already beginning to see there's a potential underspend that may come through in the autumn as a result of recruitment levels with one of our HEIs. So we use that to sort of try and inform our forecast for the year end. So whilst we're currently reporting an overspend, we think that we'll be able to recover some of that, and also cover some of the financial risks that we built in to our plan at the beginning of the year. So just to remind people, we built in around about £1 million worth of financial risk or overcommitment as part of the ITP. We also agreed increased training numbers within the education training plan, which is a financial risk of about £1 million. And earlier this morning, we were talking about the foundation programme doctors and the fact that we probably have 14 additional placeholder students that will have probably a cost of around about £300,000 this year. So when you build up all of those additional costs, that probably comes to somewhere between about £2 and £2.5 million. But we think that once we understand the autumn cohort of our students that are coming through, we should be able to cover that off with probably an underspend as a result of that. The one area that we don't have full coverage for is the Welsh Government policy change around bursaries. So if we see that increase in uptake of students having the bursary, particularly in the autumn, we may not have sufficient funding to cover that off. That's something that we've highlighted constantly through our IMTP and financial plans. Just to make the board aware, we also raised that. We've raised it a number of times with Welsh Government, but we raised it in our JET meeting as a financial risk, and I subsequently shared a more detailed briefing with the Director of Finance in Welsh Government, so they're actually clear about the impact of that policy change on our financial position. So that's one that we will keep a close eye on, but particularly as we move into the autumn period. So those are probably the key areas that I just wanted to highlight. Obviously, the paper covers off where we are on our capital resource limit and our payment of invoices as well. We're happy to pause there and take any questions. Thank you.
Any questions?
I'll be really brief, Chair, and thanks, Lynn. This is really, really helpful, really clear, and a great paper to understand. And I'm quite heartened actually by our position. I know that sounds a bit.
We knew
you
were
going
going
to.
Director of Finance.
I'm quite heartened. I'm not in your seat. But we agreed that was our risk appetite. So it's great to see that actually, we're spending as much as we can on what we're in, what the money's intended for. Just two very, very brief questions. The first was, I was puzzled by the student travel, and wondered how on earth that had happened, what was behind, because it looked odd considering we haven't increased the number of students dramatically. And the second question that I probably have missed is the increase in the university course fees, and the potential for that in the autumn. I know it's built in, but I couldn't see anything in there about that as the risk.
Yeah, so in terms of the travel costs, we think the international students, so the increased number of international students this year is driving an increase in travel costs. We're also just seeing more claims coming through, so I don't know if people are more aware of what they're entitled to claim. It's quite hard to measure that at the moment, other than that we're just seeing more claims coming through. But we know that the proportionately more international students is driving an increase in travel, and there may well be some accommodation costs attached to that as well. So those are the reasons for the increased expenditure. In terms of the tuition fees, so I think the risk this year will be the bursary. Policy change around the bursary where students can take the reduced maintenance loan and the bursary, that we think will be an increased cost this year. I think the tuition fees we should be okay on this year on the basis that none of our contracts have been reviewed and we wouldn't be looking to increase the tuition fee this year, albeit that other non-health related courses, of course, universities can charge the higher tuition fee cap. I think it'll be more of an issue for 25-26, and again, it's something that we highlighted in the education training plan.
Can you just remind me, the decision about the bursary and the tuition fees by government, did that come after we'd agreed our plan or before?
So the bursary decision was last September.
Right.
So it was after we'd produced and submitted our education training plan.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been briefing Welsh Government since that policy announcement.
Yeah.
The tuition fee increase was around February.
After.
So it was around the time that the education training plan was actually approved. So yes, afterwards. Yeah.
I thought that was right.
Yeah.
I just needed
to.
I
was just trying to remember.
I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah.
So we could not have preempted those decisions.
No, because we weren't asked to provide advice.
Okay. All right, thank you, Glyn. So the board's asked to note the performance against the key financial targets, including the reserves position, and note the risks and opportunities which may or may not impact on the year-end financial position. Agreed? Diolch yn fawr. Iaith Cymraeg.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Cadeirydd. Felly mae yna dwy rhan i'r adroddiad yma. Yn gyntaf, yn ystyried ac yn gofyn i'r bwrdd i cymeradwyo'r adroddiad blynyddol ar y Gymraeg, ac yn ail, da ni hefyd yn gofyn am gefnogaeth y bwrdd o ran yr argymhellion yn y papur a'r beth ni'n bwriadu wneud o ran cynnig wneud o ran y mater i'r ymgynghoriad a'r bwriad i ddod â agig o dan safonau'r Gymraeg. Felly o ran y adroddiad blynyddol, mae'n braf gallu adrodd bod ni wedi bod yn cydymffurfio gyda'n cynllun iaith. O ran uchelbwyntiau yr adroddiad, da ni'n gallu cadarnhau bod ni wedi cyfieithu dros 5 miliwn o eiriau llynedd. A beth sy'n bwysig am hynny ydy bod o'n adlewyrchu ymwybyddiaeth y cry ymysg yn staff o ran gyfynion ein cynllun iaith. Da ni hefyd yn gallu cadarnhau bod 84 yw'r staff yn dysgu'r Gymraeg ar hyn o bryd. Wrth gwrs, yna eto yn adlewyrchu diwylliant positif tuag at yr iaith Gymraeg yma yn agig. Ac hefyd mae'n braf hefyd gallu cadarnhau bod ni wedi comisiynu cwrs ar codi hyder yn y Gymraeg. Enw'r cwrs ydy Agor y Drws, ac mae'n cael ei arwain gan Mererid Awst, prifawr, wrth gwrs, fydd yn chwarae rhan allweddol yn y Steddfod wythnos nesaf. O ran safonau'r Gymraeg, mae Llywodraeth Cymru wedi cadarnhau o'r diwedd bwriad bod agig am ddod o dan y safonau, ac mae hynny i'w croesawu gan y bwrdd. Mae'r bwrdd wedi bod yn wedi mynegu cefnogaeth i ddod o dan y safonau ers blynyddoedd, ac yn wir nath y cadeirydd sgwennu at y gweinidog ag at y Comisiynydd Iaith gofyn bod ag i cymryd o dan y safonau yn gynharach leni. Felly, y cwestiwn da ni'n codi yn y papur ydy beth dyled i gynnwys yn y safonau. A'r hyn da ni'n i awgrymu yn y papur ydy bod ni'n gofyn i'r Llywodraeth fod agig yn derbyn safonau sydd yn gymysgedd o set 7, sef safonau ar gyfer iechyd, a set 6, set addysg. Bydd aelodau'r bwrdd yn gyfarwydd â'r cynlluniaeth presennol, ac wrth gwrs mae'r cynlluniaeth yna yn adlewyrchu gymysgedd o set 7 a 6. Ac mae hynny wrth gwrs yn adlewyrchu y rôl unigryw agig fel arweinydd system addysg a hyfforddiant yn y gwasanaeth iechyd. Felly, diolch gyda.
Diolch, Dafydd. Mae'r iaith yn byw yma yn HTIW. So, are there any questions or comments on this? I have to say, if anybody asks, what does HTIW do to contribute to the flourishing of the language in its teaching and training? I thought this document gave an eloquent explanation. I think it's also hopeful. And having been to the Royal Welsh Show and spoken to those students from Aberystwyth, half of whom were studying their nursing career using the Welsh language, who fully intend to use the language in their clinical practice. You know, it's not just words. There's an actual tale on this. The phenomenal amount of translation that we do. Phenomenal. But, you know, when I got back to that, this is really hopeful. So I'm asking the board to approve the Welsh Language Annual Report for 23-24. And I'm asking you to approve the proposed approach to the Welsh Language Standards consultation. And I'd like to say thank you, David, for to you and to the team for the enthusiasm and the welcome they give to anybody who has any aspiration whatsoever to use the language. It's not just the door is open; the door has been opened.
Yeah, the progress has been phenomenal, and I think with regards to the team, in terms of selling the Welsh language, I've never worked with such an enthusiastic bunch. You just seem to get the balance right into inspiring people.
And Lisa, no pressure.
Absolutely. No.
All right, thank you very much. Agenda item 4.4, Board Assurance Framework.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Cadeirydd. Felly mae yna dwy ran i'r papur yma hefyd. Yn gyntaf, da ni'n gofyn i'r bwrdd i adolygu'r BAF sicrwydd, ac mae'r BAF hwn fel atodiad rhif 1. Mae'r BAF yn ddogfen dynamic. Da ni i ddiweddaru fo efelychu nodiadau i'r IMTP a'r nodau strategol, enghraifft. Da ni hefyd yn gofyn i'r bwrdd i ystyried a cefnogi diweddariad i'n risgiau strategol. Bydd aelodau'r bwrdd yn ymwybodol yn bod ni wedi ystyried risgiau strategol mewn cyfarfod o'r sesiwn datblygu'r bwrdd yn gynharach eleni, ac mae'r strategaeth risg arfaethedig hefyd wedi cael ystyried gan y Pwyllgor Chwilio yn ei cyfarfodydd ar 8 o Ebrill ag ar y 4 ar 20 o Fehefin. Felly, da ni'n gofyn ysgolch yna i'r bwrdd i nodi'r BAF ac hefyd i ystyried ac meredwyo ein risgiau strategol ysgolch yna.
So I know board members have been involved in looking at the framework and its development. Are there any questions or comments? So I'm asking board members then to note following review of the BAF for assurance and approve the draft strategic risks as outlined in Schedule 1 of the Board Assurance Framework. Thank you very much. Agenda item 4.5, Complaints, Concerns, Annual Report. And that's just for the board to note?
Yes.
For information? Okay, thank you very much. Speaking up safely framework 4.6, something that we've referred to during this meeting, very important. David.
Diolch yn fawr iawn. Felly, papur i'w nodi ers sicrwydd ydy hon, ac wrth gwrs mae'n gysylltiedig efo papur blaenorol a'r cwynion a pryderon. Bydd aelodau yn gyfarwydd iawn ar fframwaith llefaru diogelwch, Speaking Up Safely neu SUS, ac mae'r papur yn crynhoi y gwaith a wnaethon ni gan agig llynedd, hyd at dechrau mis Gorffennaf. O ran uchelbwyntiau, da ni wedi cwblhau neu asesu bod 31 o 32 camau gweithredu, bod nhw wedi cael eu asesu'n Bwrdd, yn hyn yn golygu bod nhw wedi cael eu cwblhau neu ei weithredu, ac mae un yn cael ei ystyried yn amfer ac yn ei ystyried hynny mwy mewn eiliad. Yr hyn dwi eisiau bwysleisio ydy, bod ni'n nodi bod 31 o 32 camau gweithredol yn cael ei asesu'n Bwrdd, mae hyn yn fater sy'n wneud gyda newid diwylliant, ac bod ni wedi gweithredu'r bod ni wedi sicrhau y camau hyn, a mae yna dal gwaith sylweddol i wneud yn siŵr bod ni yn arwain at newid diwylliant. O ran uchelbwyntiau yn gwaith, da ni wedi sicrhau rwan bod hyfforddiant SUS wedi gynnwys yn ein rhaglenni hyfforddi ar gyfer staff, ar gyfer rheolwyr, ac hefyd ar gyfer arweinwyr, ac mae hyn yn cynnwys ffocws arbennig ar diogelwch rhyw. Da ni hefyd wedi gosod prosesau SUS clir a hawdd i'w dilyn ar ein mewnrwyd ar gyfer staff, ar gyfer myfyrwyr ac ar gyfer fforddeuon. O ran y ffocws ar gyfer blwyddyn nesaf, da ni yn parhau i ddatblygu'n polisi diogelu, ac hwn ydy'r elfen sydd wedi cael ei ystyried yn amser, ac mae'r ddogfen wedi cael ei drafftio, a da ni'n anelu i gwblhau o yn mis Awst. Da ni hefyd yn parhau i ddatblygu'r proses SUS tu fewn i agig. Mi ydyn ni ar fin cychwyn proses ymgynghori manwl a thrylwyr gyda staff. A'r bwriad yna ydy bod ni'n codi ymwybyddiaeth o SUS, ond bod ni hefyd efo proses yn adlewyrchu gyfynion ni fel corff. Felly, da ni'n gofyn i'r bwrdd ysgolch yma i nodi'r bwrdd mwyn sicrwydd.
Diolch, David. Bill, do you want to come in?
Please, just briefly. I think all can see from the paper that there's been good progress. It's complicated for HUMW because we have 3 domains: students, trainees, and the staff. And if I were looking at this as a sort of marketing exercise, I'd like to see a bit more coherence of the Speaking Up Safely brand for HEW across the 3 domains. Because I think that would help reinforce communication of what it's all about. And obviously I've been meeting with David on a regular basis to look at progress, and I think that we're now at the stage where we need more visibility of Speaking Up Safely, and I think that's evidenced from some of the other agenda items we've discussed today. And that there perhaps needs to be a bigger push on communication of it, which could be helped by the coherence of branding across the 3 domains. Because we want this to live, and we want people to be able to raise things. And it's that we're here to listen, we want to hear. Please.
Absolutely. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that I know it's inevitable, but it does worry me when we convert something so important into a rag-weighted list of actions, because you can very easily hit the target and miss the point. So, whilst it's good that process measures are in place, it does not mean at all that we've got this right. And I think that we've got to keep sight of that. We will look at something interesting actually from the ambulance service here in the week, Jason Livingston, which I think links into what you're saying, Jane, around how we promote this, because you know, based on, as you say, many conversations you've had today, feedback I've had myself as well from within the organisation and students out there, they do not feel comfortable to speak up safely in many instances at the moment. So regardless of whether we think we're putting in place all the processes, and I think part of that is about, again, you know, not to go on about the hybrid working model, but the lack of visibility and interaction of people in a place and trust that you build up as a result of that human connection, I think really impacts on people's understanding and propensity to raise those concerns, because they don't know people, they see them on the screen. So I think we've got to really watch that issue. So on the one hand, it's good the actions are being progressed. On the other hand, I absolutely agree with you, Jane. We've got to now convert that into something that is cultural, not process.
Just a comment about the process, which is, I mean, it's fine, but I was looking at this thinking of the risk here of someone being caught in this loop forever and a day, because I can't see any way out other than if they're not happy, they just keep going round and round, which I don't think is the intention. And it's always the issue when you try to put something in a line drawing like this. But I'd just be interested to know, maybe it comes from some experience of when what the concerns are. But if after, you know, effectively a month, remember if the person is not happy, then what? They go around the loop again for someone else to look into it. So maybe needs to be some other place that this goes if
where's the life jacket
with that. Otherwise you just have, and then people get even more upset. One thing I would like to add, because Martin shared with me the one for students in training, the toolkit. I thought it was really good. I have to say, I was really impressed, particularly the stories in there and the voices in there to try and encourage people. I don't know if everybody else has seen it, but I was really impressed with it, actually. I know it's only just been launched. But I think if people can be encouraged, I think it would be really good. It's a very good toolkit.
So
we were sharing notes, obviously, because I just wrote because it's actually the same thought gone through. How do you get out of that? And then the other one, the second appendix, which was as a student speaking up, didn't appear to be, and I know it's more difficult if people raise things anonymously, but there didn't seem to be the ability to do that in this process. And I know it's often much more difficult, and the idea is we want people to feel comfortable to be able to speak up, but I didn't see that option in that diagram. So I don't think we should preclude people from still raising concerns honestly.
David, did you want to come back?
Yeah, just so with regards to, just want to come back on two of the points. So with regards to the point around just having a more consistent approach, and obviously the comments around the toolkit. Toolkit currently focuses on students only, and we're working on expanding that to include trainees as well. So I think that obviously will lead to a much better and clearer product, if you like, in terms of speaking of safety. On the anonymity point, it is quite a difficult point, and I'll probably have a discussion with you externally just to go through that. But where we can, we will deal with the complaints on an anonymous basis. With regards to the loop point, that's certainly not our intention. We'll have another look at that, and obviously we'll clarify that there is an end process in place, and there is an escalation process if you're not happy with the initial response as well.
I think the point that I hear very strongly is we can have a great process. But, does the soup taste the same as it suggests on the outside of the tin? Right? We've got to make sure, right, that I've been in a world where I'd always want to do the right thing regardless of the rules. Yeah. And it's not about, we're not doing the right thing in order to show you've adhered to the rules. You're doing the right thing because it's the right thing. And actually, the most difficult thing is picking up the hiss. It doesn't even have to be a bang, it just needs to be a hiss. Because prevention is probably the better part of having heard just the starting of something, speaking up. when you've got to the point where people have to feel they're at risk, or they can't possibly do it, or it could not possibly happen, right? Then you've missed a bit. So I welcome this piece of work personally, and I would, Jane, I would drive this as hard as you can, right? I really think that this is a good thing for the organisation. It's the guts of it. It really is the guts. And if ever we need to do anything with the leadership programs, it's about how translating the policy becomes reality. I think that's, it's got so many connotations of when it goes wrong. So we've considered, and we're noting the update. Where am I? I've forgotten where I am. Yeah, we've considered and note the update in respect of the implementation. And I don't think we should call it Welsh Government Speaking Up Safely Framework. It's ours. It's ours, in line with the Welsh. Yes. We're not trying to comply. What we're trying to do is do. Okay, so I think that should read implementation of HEIW Speaking Up Safely framework, yeah, aligned to. Okay. Thanks very much. Everybody happy with that? Sorry to change the words on the hook. Right. 4.7, Audit and Assurance Committee update.
Chair, the papers have been read, I'm absolutely sure. Refer to 2 meetings of the Audit and Assurance Committee. An ordinary business meeting and the business meeting in relation to the annual accounts. The recommendations set out in the cover paper were in fact considered at the special meeting of the board to consider the accounts.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Jane? No. Education Commissioning Quality Committee on the 11th of July.
I will follow Jane in as much as saying.
You are so good.
I know you've had the paper, you've read the paper. I'm happy to take any questions. There were a couple of significant things that we considered. Obviously, the education and training plan, which we put on the agenda today. And also, as an appendix, you will note that we considered and approved the committee's annual report for 23-24. And really, I'll leave it at that, and if anyone's got any questions.
So I have to say, as the chair, I've been to both committees. You've put up with me, and I have to say that the work that's done takes a huge weight off the board meetings. The quality of it is not just about setting out, is this good enough? It's about setting an expectation as well. So I'm the chairmanship of it and the membership. I think we've got it. I think we're in a good place at the minute, and I'd encourage people to really run with it. And if you think that your terms of reference or standing orders aren't strong enough or sufficient enough, I'd welcome feedback on that. But thank you very much. So we've come now to the most important thing we will do today, I think, and that's the corporate risk register. And can I just check you've all read it? Are you happy following today's meeting that the corporate risk register adequately reflects the position, or do we need to check? Do we need to reflect on anything, John?
Chair, can I just raise 2 points if I may? And Ian noted one of the things that I was wanting to raise first thing this morning, and that is, accept the 9 risks that are on the register, but I would ask the executive team to consider whether it's a risk or whether we should need to keep an eye on the matter around university financial sustainability currently. Our university colleagues are in a very challenging position financially. It's not just one, it's all universities, both England and in Wales. Not all, but many are looking at financial recovery plans. And what had come into my mind when I was going through the risk register, which is interesting, and that Ian had a discussion with me earlier on also, what are the implications of that financial position within the HE sector for us and our commissioning process in delivering our ambition as part of that ambition, part of that commissioning process? There may well be providers who are questioning the delivery of certain programs. Is that a risk that we should be putting on our risk register? And if so, what are our mitigations? Or are we at the stage at the moment that we need to be keeping a close eye on this, that it's an issue that's brewing, and that we need to be thinking about our mitigations? That's one point for the board to consider. And the other one, a small point, and that is in relation, Lisa, to the risk around recruitment of numbers. It notes positively that the numbers are increased, they're the highest that they've been, etc. It's remaining as amber as a risk, but the trend is staying the same. I'm just questioning, are we actually looking at a trend that's an improving trend? So it's small, but I think it's important to note, based on the narrative needs to reflect what we're actually seeing in the risk. And I just thought, well, actually, we're probably in a little bit of an improving situation. And it says we're static. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, John. So I think there's a very serious question there. And can we, should we ask the exec team to go and look at that?
We have.
Oh.
So Ian brought an initial discussion paper exec team yesterday about financial risk for higher education. And I think, as John said, we're exactly in that point of recognising there is a potential risk there, but trying to quantify it. So we haven't got the right information yet to be able to assess the probability and impact in order to know what the mitigating or actions we would want to take against that risk. So we just started that conversation, John, and I'm sure that Ian will engage with board members in order to try and bring that to a conclusion, really. So it's a holding risk at the moment until we understand it better.
There is another issue related to it, in that the body responsible for commissioning higher education is now changed, and they have already made decisions about commissioning decisions. So I think we should not only look at the establishments themselves, but how the new body will behave and how our relationship with the new body comes into fruition.
Yeah, and their grants all reduced.
So they made some very serious.
Their grants are reduced to an each, quite significant.
Yeah.
Cardiff, for example, I think it's 3 points something.
Yeah, but it may not just be about financial decisions. It may be about culture and nature.
I think that's that issue is probably one that would be useful in discussing the board development session as well. Next.
Okay.
It links to the administration.
Okay, everybody. So it's not good. We've had the discussion about the register. The register remains the same with a consideration. Okay.
Yeah, I'm unsure whether this needs to go on the risk register yet, but we have talked quite a lot today about the relationship with, or the understanding with, the NHS executive. And I don't know yet what risks. I just suppose it's a question really for the execs as to how much the lack of clarity there is going to impact going forward. So I'm not saying we must put it on.
It has been on previously.
Okay, but we've had lots of conversations where it seems to be bubbling. Is the best way to describe it.
We will certainly review that.
Okay, you clear with that now, Dan?
Yeah, very. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody. you've earned yourself 10 minutes for lunch. We will reconvene again as a board in a development session this afternoon. And we will have a further board development session on the 29th of August here in Agored. Diolch o galon. Thanks very much.